right, everyone, welcome back. Today we're diving deep into something I think we're all invested in, and that's building, those really strong relationships.
Yeah, those rock-solid connections we all crave.
Exactly. And to help us with this, we're dissecting a really interesting episode called 10 Valuable Relationship Advice for Success. And it's from a show called Elevate Today and Tomorrow, which you might be familiar with.
Definitely a great show, packed with actionable advice.
Yeah, for sure. And, because you guys love to go, beyond just the surface level, we're not just going to summarize the episode. We want to pull out the most actionable, even surprising pieces of advice to help you guys, level up all your connections, whether it's with a partner or family, friends.
Absolutely. And the episode really starts strong by, emphasizing this idea of defining what success actually looks like in your relationships, on your terms.
Oh, that's so important because it's so easy to get caught up in those picture perfect ideals we see everywhere, right? But true fulfillment, it comes from aligning your relationship goals with your own values.
Right, before you even start building a house, you need to know what kind of foundation you're working with. Mm-hmm. What are your non-negotiables?
Exactly. It's what does a successful relationship look and feel like to me? Not to my parents, not to social media, but to me personally.
And that's such a powerful question to ask yourself because it sets the stage for everything else.
Totally. And that brings us to what I think is the cornerstone of any strong relationship. And it's something the episode really hammers home. Communication.
Yes, it's the foundation of everything.
But it's not just about talking more, right?
No, definitely not. The episode gets into the nuances of clear and honest and skillful communication, the kind that, helps you avoid misunderstandings and actually deepens your intimacy with someone.
And one of the things they talk about are I statements. I've heard about those, but honestly, sometimes they feel a bit clunky. How can we use them in a way that feels natural and actually works?
Well, it's all about shifting the focus from blame or accusation to your own experience. So instead of saying you always cut me off, you might try something I feel unheard when my concerns about, say, saving are interrupted. I'd really appreciate it if we could each fully voice our thoughts before responding.
Oh, I see. So it's about focusing on how you feel and what you need.
Exactly. And it opens up space for a more constructive dialogue.
It still gets your point across, but in a way that feels more inviting rather than, starting a fight.
It's all about tone and intention.
Okay, that makes sense. And then the episode also emphasizes the power of those nonverbal cues.
Ah, yes. Those subtle signals we send without even realizing it.
Right. Body language, tone of voice, eye contact, all that unspoken stuff.
It can be so powerful, right? Sometimes a look can say more than words.
Totally. So being mindful of these cues, it's you're speaking a whole other language alongside your words.
Exactly. And it can make a huge difference in how your message is received and understood.
Makes sense. So communication is key, but we know relationships aren't always smooth sailing. The Elevate Today and Tomorrow episode, it also dives into how to face challenges, together.
Yes, and it's not just about weathering the storm, but about how that shared experience actually strengthens your bond.
It makes me think of when I had to move unexpectedly a few years ago. My best friend, she didn't just help me pack. She was there for the whole emotional roller coaster.
Oh, that's what friends are for.
Seriously, we laughed, we cried, we ate way too much pizza. It was stressful for sure, but sharing that experience, it made our bond unbreakable, you know?
I'll have that. And the episode really underscores that building that kind of resilience in your relationships, it requires something really precious. Time, dedicated quality time.
Okay, time management. Now, that's something I know you're amazing at, but it's something I personally struggle with, haha. How do we make sure we're actually prioritizing quality time with the people we care about, especially when life gets crazy busy?
Yeah, it's a constant juggling act. But the episode emphasizes that even small, dedicated pockets of time can make a huge difference. Think of it as making deposits in your relationship bank account.
Ooh, I like that analogy. But let's be honest, we've all been guilty of phone snubbing our loved ones at some point, right?
Oh, absolutely. In this hyper-connected world, it's so easy to get distracted.
Right. Even the most well-intentioned among us can fall prey to the allure of our phones.
It's true. But the episode reminds us that those moments where we truly unplug and just be present with someone, those are the moments that create those lasting memories and, deepen our connection.
It's like hitting the pause button on the chaos of life and just savoring that connection with someone you care about. And speaking of connection, the episode also goes deep on empathy, which, is such a hot topic these days.
It is. And I think the episode does a great job of moving beyond just the buzzword and explaining what empathy actually looks like in real life relationships.
Yeah, because it's not just sympathy, right? It's about going deeper to truly understand how someone else is feeling.
Exactly. And the episode talks about active listening, which means really tuning in to what the other person is saying, both verbally and non-verbally.
Okay, so it's not just about hearing the words, but also paying attention to their body language and like their tone of voice.
Exactly. It's like becoming a mirror for their emotions, helping them feel seen and heard.
I remember a while back, a friend was going through a tough time, and I was so focused on offering solutions that I didn't realize she just needed to like vent.
We've all been there. Sometimes the best way to show empathy is simply to listen without judgment.
Just be that like safe space for them to process their emotions.
Exactly. And that brings us to another crucial topic, and that's boundaries.
Oh, boundaries. That's something I think a lot of people struggle with, especially when they're trying to be supportive in their relationships.
It's true. It can feel uncomfortable at first, but the episode really emphasizes that setting healthy boundaries is actually a form of self-respect and respect for the other person.
It's not selfish.
Not at all. It's about recognizing your limits and communicating them clearly. And that can actually prevent burnout and resentment in the long run.
Oh, that makes sense. So it's like, if you take care of yourself, you can actually show up better for the people you care about.
Precisely. And the episode suggests a technique called boundary scripting, which I think is brilliant.
Boundary scripting. Okay, I've never heard of that.
Well, it's about like pre-planning what you'll say when a boundary is crossed. So, if you have a friend who consistently calls late at night, you might script something like, hey, I love our chats, but I need to wind down after 9 p.m. so I can, get enough sleep for my morning routine. Could we maybe aim for calls before then?
Oh, that's a great idea. It takes the pressure off trying to come up with the right words on the spot, especially when you're like feeling put on the spot.
Exactly. And the episode reminds us that setting boundaries is an ongoing process. Your needs and limits might change over time, and that's totally normal.
So it's okay to adjust those boundaries as needed.
Absolutely. It's about finding that sweet spot where both you and the other person feel respected and supported.
Okay, this is all such great stuff, but I'm realizing we've only covered a fraction of the insights from this episode. I think we need to pause here and pick up the rest of the conversation in part 2.
Definitely. Stay tuned, because we've got more juicy nuggets to unpack, like how to handle conflict constructively, the importance of surrounding yourself with the right people, and the power of, giving love without expecting anything in return.
All that and more coming up in part 2. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Welcome back, everyone. Before the break, we were talking about setting those healthy boundaries, which is all about taking care of yourself, right? But the Elevate Today and Tomorrow episode also reminds us that healthy relationships also involve surrounding yourself with the right people.
Yes, your squad matters. It's about building that support system that lifts you up and, encourages you to grow.
Absolutely. You've probably heard the saying, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Well, the episode really emphasizes that there's a lot of truth to that.
It's so true. Think about it. The people we're closest to, they influence our energy, our mindset, even our goals.
Exactly. And, it's worth really taking stock of your social circle. Are there people in your life who, consistently drain your energy? Or are the people you're spending time with the ones who inspire you to be your best self?
Ooh, that's a good journaling prompt. I'm going to have to reflect on that one later. But okay, Switching gears a bit, the episode also talks about gratitude, which I know can sound like a little cheesy, but I'm a huge believer in the power of, expressing appreciation to the people you care about.
Me too. It's something we often take for granted, but the episode really highlights that when you regularly thank and appreciate those you care about, it strengthens your bonds with them, fosters those positive feelings.
It's like a secret weapon for boosting happiness in all your relationships.
Totally. So how can we make gratitude, a more consistent part of our lives?
Right, because it's easy to, forget to do it.
It really is. But it can be as simple as, making a conscious effort to say thank you more often, leaving a heartfelt note for someone, or, even just acknowledging those little things your partner or friend does that you appreciate.
Yeah. I've been trying to be more mindful about this lately. The other day, my partner made dinner after I had, a crazy long day at work. And instead of just being oh, thanks, I actually stopped what I was doing, made eye contact, and I told him how much I appreciated him, taking that off my plate.
Oh, that's so sweet. And I'm sure he really appreciated that.
Yeah, I think so. And it just felt good to, really express my appreciation.
Those small, genuine expressions of gratitude, they can make a world of difference.
They really can. Okay, so we've talked about communication, empathy, boundaries, gratitude. Now let's tackle something that can feel a bit trickier, and that's conflict. The episode acknowledges that, disagreements are basically inevitable in NY relationship.
Yeah, for sure. Conflict is a natural part of being human.
Exactly. But it's how we handle those conflicts that really matters. So how do we navigate those, choppy waters in a way that actually strengthens our relationships?
Well, the Elevate Today and Tomorrow episode really focuses on this idea of managing conflict constructively, turning those potentially explosive moments into opportunities for growth.
Because it can be easy to just like explode, right?
It really can. And one of the first things they emphasize is staying calm, which, is often easier said than done.
Yeah, tell me about it, especially when you're feeling like really triggered or hurt.
Oh, I know. But the episode reminds us that when our emotions are running high, it's so easy to say things we regret later, or just resort to those unhealthy communication patterns that we know don't work.
Right, like yelling or shutting down completely.
Exactly. And those things just escalate the conflict. So taking a step back to cool down before you engage, it can make all the difference.
Do you have any go-to strategies for staying calm in those moments? Because I know I can be pretty fiery sometimes.
Well, me too. But one technique I find really helpful is actually taking a time out. You can just say something like, hey, I'm feeling really overwhelmed right now. Can we maybe take a break and come back to this in an hour? And then use that time to do something calming. Go for a walk, listen to music, whatever helps you kind of reset.
Oh, I love that. Because it's so easy to just get swept up in the emotion of the moment.
It really is.
Yeah.
But that time out can help you get back to a more grounded, centered place.
So take a time out, cool down. What else?
Well, the episode also highlights the importance of avoiding blame. It's so easy to fall into that trap of pointing fingers and being like, well, you did this, or it's your fault.
Yeah, I'm definitely guilty of that sometimes.
Me too.
Mm-hmm.
But when we do that, it just creates defensiveness on the other person's part, and it just escalates the conflict.
It's like throwing gasoline on a fire.
Exactly. So instead of blaming, the episode suggests really focusing on understanding the other person's perspective, even if you don't agree with it.
Oh, that's hard, but so important.
It really is. It's about saying things like, help me understand why you feel this way, instead of, you're wrong.
Right, because it's not always about being right.
It's about understanding where they're coming from.
So stay calm, avoid blame. What's the next step?
Well, the next piece of advice is to focus on solutions instead of trying to win the argument.
Oh, I love that. Because sometimes it can feel like a competition, right?
Totally. But when we shift our mindset to finding a solution that works for both people, we're much more likely to reach a compromise that strengthens the relationship.
It makes me think of a conflict I had with a colleague a while back. We were both so focused on proving our own point that the meeting just went nowhere.
I've been there.
And it wasn't until later that I realized if we'd focused on, finding a solution that met both our needs, we could have saved ourselves a lot of time and energy.
Exactly. It's about remembering that you're on the same team, even when you're having different opinions.
So to recap the episode's advice on handling conflict, stay calm, avoid blame, focus on understanding each other's perspective, and work together to find solutions.
It's like a roadmap for navigating those choppy waters in a way that, actually brings you closer together.
Okay, love that. Now on to the next nugget of wisdom from Elevate Today and Tomorrow. And this one is all about giving love without expecting anything in return, which can be such a game changer in relationships.
This is one of my favorite pieces of advice from the episode, honestly. It's about cultivating that spirit of generosity in your relationships, offering love and kindness and support freely without keeping score.
Because it's so easy to fall into that trap of tit for tat, right? I did the dishes last night, so you should do them tonight.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah.
I'm definitely guilty of that sometimes.
Me too. But the episode reminds us that true love isn't about keeping track of who does what. It's about giving from a place of abundance without any expectation of, reciprocation.
Exactly. And it's not about grand gestures either. It's about those little acts of kindness, those moments of support and appreciation that really make a difference.
It's like bringing your partner their favorite coffee in the morning, just because.
Yeah, exactly. Those small gestures, done with love and without expectation, are the ones that really nourish a relationship.
It's like you're saying, I love you and I want to make your day a little brighter without needing anything back in return.
And when you approach your relationships with that kind of generosity, it creates this amazing positive feedback loop. The other person feels loved and appreciated, and that inspires them to give back in their own way.
So instead of getting caught up in who does what, it's about creating that culture of love and support where everyone feels valued.
Exactly. And that's the kind of environment that fosters those truly deep and meaningful connections.
Okay, wow. We've covered so much ground already. I can't believe how much valuable advice was packed into that Elevate Today and Tomorrow episode.
I know, right? It's incredible how many actionable tips and insights they managed to squeeze in.
But before we get too carried away, I'm realizing we need to pause here for another break.
You're right. But don't worry, we'll be back soon for part 3, where we'll wrap up this deep dive with some final takeaways and, really drive home the point of how much our relationships impact our overall well-being.
It's all connected. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
All right, welcome back. So we've spent this entire deep dive unpacking this Elevate Today and Tomorrow episode, and honestly, my mind is blown.
Right. So much good stuff.
So much. We've talked about communication, empathy, boundaries. It's like they handed us a toolbox for building better relationships.
Seriously. And it all comes back to like that core idea they emphasize, defining what success in your relationships looks like on your terms.
Yeah, not based on what other people think or what we see on social media, but what genuinely brings us joy and makes us feel fulfilled.
Exactly. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I think it's worth taking a moment to like crystallize those key takeaways, those things you can actually start using right away.
Yes, let's recap the best nuggets of wisdom.
Well, first up, we have to remember communication is the lifeblood of A and Y relationship, right?
It's how we connect.
Yeah.
And the episode gave us some fantastic, actionable tips for actually improving our communication. Yeah, like using those I statements to express our feelings without blaming, being mindful of those nonverbal cues, and mastering active listening, which
It's like really tuning in and making the other person feel heard.
Exactly. And speaking of understanding, I think the episode's emphasis on empathy was so important. It's about going beyond just like acknowledging someone's feelings and really trying to step into their shoes.
Yeah, it's one thing to say, oh, that sucks, but it's another to really try to understand where they're coming from.
Right. And sometimes the most empathetic thing you can do is just listen without judgment,
Just be that safe space for them.
Absolutely. And, this ties into another key takeaway we talked about, which is setting those healthy boundaries. It's not selfish. It's actually a form of self-respect.
And respect for the other person, too.
Exactly. Because you can't pour from an empty cup. You have to take care of your own needs in order to show up for others.
And I loved that boundary scripting technique they talked about. It's such a helpful tool for like actually communicating those boundaries effectively.
Right. Because it takes the pressure off trying to come up with the perfect words on the spot.
Totally. And remember, they said setting boundaries is an ongoing process. Your needs might change over time, so it's okay to adjust those boundaries as needed.
Exactly. It's all about finding that balance where both you and the other person feel respected and supported.
Yeah.
And, we also have to remember that conflict is a natural part of any relationship.
Yeah, there are going to be bumps in the road.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But the episode gave us some really solid advice for, navigating those conflicts constructively.
I loved their tips. Stay calm, don't blame, focus on understanding each other's perspective, and work together to find a solution.
It's about remembering that you're on the same team, even when you disagree.
And one of the most powerful messages from the episode, the one that really stuck with me, was the idea of giving love without expecting anything in return.
Oh, that's such a good one.
Because it's so easy to keep score in relationships, But when we give freely, without any strings attached, it transforms the whole dynamic.
It really does. And lastly, we have to remember the people we surround ourselves with have a huge impact on our relationships. Choose your squad wisely.
Absolutely. This whole deep dive has given us so much to think about, and I'm honestly feeling super inspired to start putting all this amazing advice into practice.
Me too. It's been such a great conversation, and I hope everyone listening feels as empowered as I do to build stronger, healthier, more fulfilling relationships.
It all starts with taking those first steps. So go out there, communicate openly, express that gratitude, set those boundaries, don't be afraid of conflict, and most importantly, give love freely without expecting anything in return.
Beautifully said. And that wraps up our deep dive for today. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep loving.